I'm going to take some bulky commercial spun yarn. This is wool. I like it because it's a little dense. It has some elasticity and it won't catch down under my presser foot when I'm using it. It should go through pretty easily. So that's what I'm going to use as my base to sew my locks onto. I'm going to start by dropping the presser foot and just sewing forward and back once to lock that yarn down. I have my machine set to do a zigzag stitch. I think that's much better for this kind of thing. I've pulled out a lock now, a little bit of fiber, and I just simply lay it across the yarn. You have to pull on the back end a little bit as it goes through. My presser foot is not going to pull the yarn through with the lock as easily. I find I have to lay the lock down, grab it with my hand a little bit, give some tension on the back, and kind of feed it through. You do have to obviously be careful where your yarn is so that you're stitching through the fiber, right through the middle of the fiber, and onto the yarn. If you go off the yarn a little bit, if you have your zigzag stitch set widely, it's not such a big issue. And it's really, it really is a lot of fun to be able to take these fibers, lay them out across the yarn, and stitch them on. I try to keep them pretty close together. Put a lot of tension, as I say, on that back edge of yarn so that things don't get stuck down among your presser foot. You can take more than one lock at a time and lay it out, straightening the yarn and just sewing a little at a time, making sure everything gets caught in. So you're sort of zigzagging the fiber onto the yarn. Simple as that. It's a little fussy at first, but I'm sure that you'll find once you've done this a little bit, you kind of work it out, and it becomes much faster and much more simple. I didn't have any trouble really with the fibers getting caught down in my machine. I thought that might be an issue, but I have not had that problem. So there you go. Now here I'm going to try using some raw romney. Now this romney is quite long. The staple is almost 5 inches. And I'm thinking I might want to do something sort of fancy with this. I'm going to puff it. And then I'm going to take a piece of merino to set it off. And open that up a little bit. And I'm going to, if you leave your needle down, lift up your presser foot, you can slide your fiber right underneath it. When you put your presser foot down on your machine, you do want to be sure that these fibers don't get over top of it, like this, because that will catch and pull and you may have to stop a little bit later. And try this again. Now the romney is beautiful fiber. It's going to give a very different look to the finished product. And as I say, it's quite long. Now this has not been washed. It's quite clean, but it hasn't been washed. I will wash this after I sew it. But I'm going to try doing some sort of little patterns with it. Maybe do it in a circle, a little bow shaped like that. I hope you can see that. Let's stitch that on. I made a little circle with that one. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to take an amount of lock. I'm just going to cross them over like a little, reminds me actually of the breast cancer sign, the little pink ribbon that's kind of bent over. Now let's throw in a little lock of merino. Now this is merino again, this is raw. It will wash up right white. I've already tried it, so I know that the end will be very white with that merino. Now let's try something else with this nice Romney. Let's try, what else could we do? We could just double it. If you have a long staple, you could just simply double it up and put it right in the middle of your yarn. So half of it is on one side and half of it's on the other. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but I do have some fibers caught in my presser foot there. Let's do just a little more before I pull it out and show you what it looks like. Again, put this right down. Keep my yarn fairly taut so that I can guide it. Did catch a little of that, didn't I? Wow, interesting. I think perhaps if I'm going to do that technique with the Romney, and I'm going to cross it over, I'm going to lay a piece of, this is Wensleydale. I can tell this is Wensleydale right off the bat because my Teeswaters are traditionally white. And there are some folks that breed colored Teeswaters, but I don't. So anything that I have that's colored, I don't even have to look up who it is. I know that it is Wensleydale. Make that little circle like this, just crossing it over. And then I'm going to take a little bit of Wensleydale, a lock, and I'm going to put it right across the middle of that so it's all in one little package. And I'm going to stitch it on. Let's see what effect that gives us. Now this will be, if you're knitting, you know, if you're going to knit with this, this will all be kind of puffed in together, so you'll have a very textured, obviously. If you're using this for, that's kind of nice. This I should have pulled a little closer together. It's a little far apart. This one's pretty good. And this is pretty good. And I think probably when I wash this, these will all come in together and form a very interesting texture. All right, let's keep playing. I love using the merino because it's easy, it really grips, and it gives kind of almost a cotton ball texture when you're all done. The Romney, I'm hoping I can keep some of the integrity of that fiber. This piece is a little shorter, so I'm just going to sew that right on next to the merino. And that should make kind of a nice juxtaposition. And now I hope as you're getting the idea here, you can do just about anything you want to. Let's see, I think we'll do a long Romney and add a nice lock in the middle of it. You don't want to get too terribly chunky because you don't want to get stuff caught down into your presser foot. I think if you had a really, really short staple length, you'd run into some trouble. I haven't tried it with a really, really short staple length because I think it would get pulled down in, the little ends would get pulled down in under by your bobbin, and you might run into some trouble doing it this way. Let's see what that looks like. I really like the combination of the Romney with the Wensley, and I wish I had put these a little closer together. I don't quite know why I'm skipping so much space in between. I seem to be skipping some. Now if you're going to knit with it, that's perfect, because then when you're knitting, the under knit stitch will be fine, and what you'll actually get is all of the fuzzy part. But if you're doing a boa, see, I would like to not see quite as much. I think what I'm not doing is giving it enough tension here. So here I am playing again with some more of our sewn locks, And this time I've used some dyed Wensleydale and Teeswater, and then I'm using raw and also dyed merino. Now what I want to show you, I find it's much easier. Here I have some dyed merino. Now this was merino that I had been spinning from the lock. Decided I wanted some color, so I tried to keep as much of the integrity of the lock as I could while I dyed it. But you can see it's not as fabulous for locks as the raw fiber is. Okay, you can see that difference, just the dyeing, rinsing and dyeing made. Now, if I put this in a basket and laid each lock out, I probably would have had more success. But what I wanted to show with you, it's exactly the same fiber and there's no problem with it. This actually washes up to be white, white, white. But when we're doing this type of sewing with the locks, it's so much easier to take these raw, beautiful, clean, I mean, look how clean that is. And yet this is a raw merino fleece. It's so much easier to take that clump of lock and stitch it than it is to take this and try to tease locks out so that I'm sure that I've got fiber that when I sew it, you know, will not be all kind of messed up. So what I'm having to do with the dyed merino is kind of clump it and slide it in. Now you can do this and you can stitch it just fine, but as you see, what happens is the stitching on the raw merino, you're sure that you have your fibers all laid up and it's going to give you a certain look at the end. The dyed merino, I've tried my best to keep it sort of organized, but look, here's a perfect example. This piece is going to pull out because it wasn't really caught into the stitching, which is fine. And you know, at the end of your process, you can actually go along, pull out a little bit in case there's anything that didn't catch. You can also trim it with a scissor if you want things to be much more even. But the raw fiber works particularly well with this. Now, when you're using a Wensleydale or a Teeswater, and you've dyed the locks like this, which I'm going to add, that type of long wool fiber is perfectly fine dyed and then sewn, because the dyeing process does not kind of clump the fiber up like it does with the merino. This merino is so easy to just pull a clump out, lay it across your base yarn, and sew. Okay, so this is a very pretty way to make some sort of a boa. And I am adding here some feathers. And the trick with the feathers for me, I'm using some beautiful lightly rinsed Wensleydale locks. You could use Teeswater just as easily. Oops, oh shoot, I'm going to have to turn this on. Wish I could turn that light off somehow. But I can't. So what I'm doing with these feathers, and you know, this takes a little extra time and it may be not something that you're interested in doing, but if you want this effect, this is how I did it. I took my feather and you know, even these soft feathers, which we've chosen to be nice and soft, still have kind of a prickly edge. So what I'm doing is I'm wrapping my lock right around that. Not on the end, but near the end. I'm leaving my needle down, lifting my presser foot, and then I'm taking this little twisted package and I'm putting it right on the middle of my yarn. And I'm going to stitch it forward and back. That's it. And then I'm going to take some more locks and just slide them on there in the regular way like this. Slide some locks on there and stitch. And what happens is you get your feathers sewn in, and what I'll go do at the end is I'll go back and on each one, see that little piece sticking up? I'm going to cut it off. Okay, now it'll be much less. There will be no pokey edges. There's the next piece right there. I'm going to cut it off. I don't have to worry because it is stitched in there, so I don't have to worry. And you know, that would be such a cool boa. Little extra work, but the results may be worth your while.